Welcome, everybody, to this latest Insurance Europe cover note. And it's a great pleasure today to be discussing diversity, inclusion and equity, DEI for short. And I'm delighted to have Gerry Cross here today as well to help me explore this topic. And Gerry represents the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, or the IAIS for short, which is a network of insurance supervisors spanning over 200 jurisdictions, I think it is, Gerry, across the globe. And you're also the Director for Financial Regulation, Policy and Risk at the Central Bank of Ireland. You're also a member of the IAIS Executive Committee and the designated IAIS Chairperson for DE&I. So the insurance sector across Europe, I think it's employing now in excess of 920,000 people across the European Union. So it's a very large workforce, and we want to be at the forefront of DEI in the workforce. So today we will explore the business case, as we don't already know what the business case is, for nurturing DE&I, including the benefits it can bring both business and consumers and the public in general. So it really makes good business sense, but there's growing awareness for the business case across all sectors. And Gerry, why do you think diversity, equity, inclusion is so important in the insurance sector, and how can it benefit both the businesses and the consumers in tandem?
Thanks, Moyagh, and look, a great pleasure to be here, and particularly to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is such an important topic and one very close to my own heart. So, as you say, I'm here in my capacity as sort of IAIS Exco champion for their diversity, equity, and inclusion strand of the current strategy. But also, I can't leave behind my role both as director in the Central Bank of Ireland and also as, for example, member of the Board of Supervisors of the European Banking Authority and involved in EIOPA, etc. So to talk to across a number of pieces, but mainly focusing on the work of the IAIS. And from the point of view, the IAIS has a number of aspects to our mandate, but really at the heart of it is the success of the insurance industry in fulfilling its role in the economy and for individual citizens and policyholders and potential policyholders. And we very kind of clearly have come to the view that in fulfilling that role and in our responsibility as supervisors and in how we think about the industry, diversity supported by equity, supported by inclusion, is a really key concept in terms of driving out the outcomes that I think we all share and that we all want to achieve. And maybe useful to start for just saying a little bit about how we think about diversity and equity and inclusion. And diversity is of course, that concept that by having a wide range of perspectives and experiences and insights, you strengthen, whether it be the governance, the performance, the risk management, the culture. That variety of perspective, that diversity of perspective, really drives enhancement in that regard. And then inclusion, well, in a way, if you manage to achieve, if you like, that front line or first line diversity, you need to have inclusion to make the diversity work. So inclusion is a way, inclusion is a way of ensuring that having achieved those multiple perspectives, you're now including all of the people and really making them feel part of your enterprise, part of your effort around those goals you set for yourself as an organization. And equity, about treating people fairly, treating people in an appropriate manner. Again, very much a component of that. So that we set our sights on that as being something that's right now strategically very important for us to drive forward on. And I guess we see it, there's a number of ways that will yield positive outcomes for firms, for their customers and potential customers, and for the industry, and therefore for the wider economy. And those being, again, you sort of almost referred to them already, Moyagh. So strengthening corporate governance, strengthening risk management, making it work more effectively because your decision making is enhanced. You're bringing more perspectives in. Strengthening culture. We hear a lot of talk about culture these days, and we hear that kind of common phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and how true it is that if you get the right culture in your organization, that will support you through thick and thin. And then, of course, I suppose the third thing I'd mention is, it really this issue, this set of issues, diversity and equity inclusion, will really support consumer outcomes, customer outcomes for your policyholders, both those you already have and those you seek to have as you expand your services in the market. So those are the kind of way, and it's sort of forming that kind of that overall view of the situation. Diversity and equity inclusion was included in one of our strategic themes in our current strategic plan in the IAIS. So I think it's been a really significant journey with lots of positivity, which I'll come back to as we go forward.
And I really like that saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Because you can have the best business strategy, but if you don't have the right culture, it isn't going to take you where you want to be. So that is a really interesting thing, really. And I'm curious to see what you have seen as the main challenges facing the IAIS in carrying out your work on DE&I. And as you look at it globally, how do you reconcile the different approaches across the world? Because there is very different stages of development and cultural differences across all jurisdictions. I know Europe is probably at the forefront of DE&I, but obviously that is a challenge for the IAIS.
Yeah, no, this has been really interesting, and you're right. Sort of there is a challenge in all of that. As you said at the beginning, Moyagh, the IAIS has over 200 members from all parts of the world, all cultural, historical, economic, different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So you'd immediately start to think, God, it's going to be a real challenge to bring forward, to engage with kind of something like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there has been challenges with that. But what's been really interesting in the sort of the discussions, the engagement, is how across the different territories, across the different stages of evolution and cultural differences, there's been a really positive sense that diversity is really important.
Okay.
Now, so the trick has been, in a way, for us, not at the IAIS Exco, in the work we've been doing with the Secretariat, and not to sort of get not to try to define everything, lock everything down, but to have the discussions around diversity and what it means and what it does, and inclusion and equity and what they mean and what they do. And it has been really interesting that this idea that actually having divergent insights, having a variety of views, having people from different backgrounds, different perspectives.
Yes.
Everyone agrees that is very valuable, and that the benefits of that those brings are really important. So it is a challenge, of course, and we have to be very conscious that as we have these discussions, that we're very conscious of the different contexts, the different situations in which the discussion is being had, the different stages of evolution of sectors, etc. But it's been a really positive thing, that sense of, but abstracting from all of that, diversity really works and really matters. Because what you're saying is, the more perspectives you get around the table, the more perspectives you get into your organization, the more insights, the more background, then that will enrich and strengthen your decision making, your governance, your culture, etc. So that's been really, really positive. But we have, as I say, and one of the tricks we have, I think, not tricks, that's the right word, but one of the techniques we have used is sort of to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, without being too definition oriented, and without deploying too many sort of sort of euphemisms and acronyms and just cut to the heart of it. What are we talking about when we talk about diversity? What does equity mean? What does inclusion mean? And that's kind of been a very positive aspect of that.
And that's interesting. That leads me into just probing you a little bit, or I'm curious to find out. Obviously, you're the chair of the Exco on the IAIS on this topic, and you're clearly very committed yourself to the whole implementation and the progression of DEI across the regulated jurisdictions. So, just tell me first of all a little bit about the IAIS, because with 200 jurisdictions to supervise and regulate, like how big and how diverse is the IAIS itself actually, and is this something they're living by themselves? Is it something that you're leading by example as well?
Thanks. It's a good question. And maybe I should just clarify, because there may be others saying, "Oh, what's he promoting?" So the terminology we use is that we have a number of champions on the Exco.
A champion.
For different parts of the strategic team. So I think there'll be some people who say, "Oh, he's going to be promoting himself to the champion." And look, I think it is really important. So in the IAIS, let me say two things. One is this idea of sort of setting an example, and in the IAIS, but also in the Central Bank of Ireland, which I sort of an area I know very well. I can say a little bit about that as well. In the IAIS, I think we've seen kind of three broad aspects to the work that we do. One is that, in terms of our role as standard setters and the promotion of high quality insurance supervision through the insurance core principles, and then the application papers. And I'm sorry for the terminology, we use the phrase application papers to describe kind of the guidance that we use to support insurance core principles. So we set out, and we'll come back to this, we set out a set of I suppose guidance for supervisors about this issue. Secondly, with our membership, right? Because we are, as we've been discussing, an organization of over 200 different member organizations, and actually how we think about diversity and inclusion in our membership practices has been really important, and sort of living that kind of don't just let the sort of those with maybe the most resources or the loudest voice or whatever be the ones who are saying the most, but try to make sure you organize yourself in a way that everyone gets to be heard and everyone gets to be part of the conversation. That's been really important. And then thirdly, how internally the secretariat and all of that is set up to do all of that. So we've done quite a lot of things in terms of, first of all, setting out a mission statement and a strategy around this, and looking at the various things that kind of key points in our organization. So, for example, the appointment of chairs and sub chairs, the membership of committees, the way we organize our big events, annual meetings and global seminars. So all of that to sort of to build in this kind of drive to ensuring diversity and inclusion are really being lived. And I think that's working really well. I mean, maybe more closely to home, maybe it's worth saying my own point of view about the Central Bank of Ireland, and where we do think, for two reasons, right, that living as a supervisor and regulatory, living diversity and equity and inclusion are really important. I think those two reasons are: one, it just makes us stronger and better, right? If we can embed diversity and inclusion in our organization, we'll be a better organization, and we will do our job better, and we will better deliver the public interest goals that we seek to deliver. And then secondly, and I think this has been really important, that as we do sort of engage very closely with our supervised firms and industry sectors on diversity related matters, the fact that we are living the same attempts at becoming really better at this and really reaping the benefits, it's a really important aspect that we're able to sort of say that this is a shared journey, We also we recognize the challenges, and here are some of the things we've been doing. And amongst the things that basically you have to come at it in a multifaceted, multi-lens kind of way. So you need to be looking at your data and statistics. I mean, ultimately, your goal is to ensure, I suppose, that your workforce represents more or less the constituency of your society. You need to be looking at the data. We for example, we've established a number of networks. For example, a parents and carers network, a women's network. And we sort of are very focused on, for example, neurological diversity, all of those things. And through that, then you begin to, so you look at your training, you look at your recruitment, you look at your promotion, you look at your targets and goals, and across that panoply, and you ask yourself year after year, right, how far have we got? Can we do better? How do we do better? But it has to be structured, it has to be determined, and it has to be founded in kind of a very, and frankly, the commitment of resources and energies to it. So, yeah, that's a little bit.
And I suppose really it's only fair, I should mention too, I think we've seen that in action from the Central Bank of Ireland. I think earlier this year, I must give credit there, we launched our own talent strategy, and we're always delighted to have a representative from the central bank to join us on those big events. And the sort of standard, if you want to say that would be happy to join it. We just asked you make sure that it's accessible for people with a disability, the venue, and that the panel that we're joining is diverse, and that it's open to not just the members of Insurance Ireland, but non-members as well, which, this was it in action, just in a small way. And it certainly gets you to think that, oh, right, yeah, we do really need to make sure that everything we do takes it into account, the DE&I, that it is diverse, inclusive and fair, for everyone. So, I think it's only fair to give Central Bank some credit in that regard too. It's certainly something we're looking at now too.
And you're right. It's the small things. It really is the small things, but it's putting the shape and the determination around those small things cumulatively, and sort of giving yourself that path forward, and then holding yourself to that. And sometimes you'll fail, right? And then you come back and say, what went wrong? Why didn't we get it? How do we do better? Can we improve this aspect of our training? Are we dealing with sort of unconscious bias? How do we get at that? Are our recruitment processes what they should be? Do our staff properly understand what we're trying to achieve? There's so much to it. But if you put that strategic approach and then live that strategy, you can really drive that forward.
Yeah. So Gerry, the IAIS launched their consultation paper there in March, and we have obviously until I think it's the 14th of June to respond to the consultation. And I know we have been actively doing that to get our feedback into Insurance Europe. But in terms of a regulator, what would you see as the warning signs that an insurer is not doing enough on DE&I, and what can our national regulator and supervisor do to help? And maybe, look, if you have some examples, there's nothing better than seeing it in action there. So
no, thanks, very, very timely. As you say, that consultation is out until the 14th of June, so a really timely discussion point. And I mean, this has been a really big year for the IAIS and its focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a number of things underway. As you say, this product, which is a focus on the governance, right, and it's a product of the governance work stream in the IAIS. Will be followed by a focus on market outcomes. So a consultation paper on market outcomes, which will come forward just into the second half of the year, and that was developed by the market conduct work group. So there's two big set pieces, as well as another piece that will be coming forward on financial inclusion. So a lot going on. Specifically to your question, the current paper I think is really interesting, in that it says three things, or it looks at three things broadly speaking. One is, when you're a supervisor and you're looking at a firm or firms, and you're identifying problems, there's a range of problems that could be to do with how they come at issues like diversity and inclusion. So, for example, if you're saying, yeah, and we've seen this, it's kind of a classic. If you're saying that really there's not the challenge happening within the decision making within this organization, there's not the level of challenge you'd expect to see, or if you're saying there's a resistance to change, or there seems to be a lack of communication, or there's a problem dealing with problems. Right? So a whole panoply of things, and we have seen this in our own experience. One way to think about how you might get at fixing those things is through the diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. So if a firm says, well, we're having these kind of chronic problems, or the supervisor saying we're seeing these chronic problems, one way to think about how you might fix them is through a kind of diversity lens. And is that a way to get it? So that's one part of the paper. Second is actually having got beyond that stage and begun to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and policies. And then a really important question and a sort of important topic for supervisors and firm and their leadership to engage on is, are those strategies and those efforts, are they cutting the mustard? If I could use that phrase, choose that kind of English sound. Are they doing their job, right? And again, what the paper I found is really good, and I can take no credit for it because this is all the work of the working group. What I found is a really good read is that it kind of calls out the things that make you think this is not quite working. So, for example, if there's unclear accountability, if you don't know at the end of the day who's leading, who's responsible for this work, and if the metrics seem to be a bit thin, the statistics, the metrics a bit thin, bit static, not really a sort of a living, driving aspect of the process. And if there's not enough attitude, and so if there's a sort of a window dressing and not enough attitude given to underlying, not enough attention given to underlying attitudes or behaviors, and if there's limited employee feedback, so a whole range of things again, which says, okay, I know you've got a policy and I know you've got a strategy, but is it really cutting the mustard? Is it really effective? And then you need to look at these things. And then the third aspect of the paper, which again I think is really useful, is what can supervisors do? And I should say, I mean, one thing is worth mentioning. So the IAIS, the way it constructs these products is based on helping supervisors globally to do the best job. So the products are sort of focused on supervisors. How can you go about this issue? But they're equally interesting to the firms who are being supervised, because it's always two sides of the coin, right? So, but the third part of this paper is looking at what can supervisors do about it when they find these problems. And again, it sets out a kind of a range of things you can do from it's kind of like at the softer end, where you're basically, and I think this is really important, because the power of these concepts in themselves is pretty strong. So having the conversation. So we found ourselves, I guess we started having this conversation maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And partly we were having the conversation, the Central Bank of Ireland, having the conversation with ourselves, getting our staff into the right place, and then having the conversation in the ecosystem with our insurance firms, as you'll know very well, but with the banking sector, the funds sector. And the conversation gets you a lot of traction because people do see it. And the regulator beginning to say this matters. But the regulator is saying it matters, then it begins to matter more generally. And then, of course, you're into the things you can do around thematic engagements, thematic reviews, the specific identification of problems that I've mentioned, and requiring those issues to be remediated, or working with the firm to remediate them. And of course, at the other end of the spectrum, and we've seen this, for example, in Solvency II, you have to be careful and nuanced and sophisticated about this, but you can also have regulatory provisions. So we see Solvency II, the new version of Solvency II, here in Europe, which has its proposals, requirements around having a diversity strategy for your board, having certain metrics as regards gender representation. And so again, one needs to be sophisticated, because I think diversity, equity, inclusion works as much by buy-in as by sort of, it's not really something you can force wholly top down, but getting that balance right between the various things, I think is so in that paper, those three aspects, diversity related, problems with your diversity strategy that can be addressed, and then what supervisors can do to sort of remediate the challenge.
I think it's really a good point you make about diversity, equity, inclusion to see it as a tool to solving problems. And those problems, as you say, come in many shapes and forms, but the next pipeline of talent coming into the industry, I do think that DE&I is going to be key to solving that problem, and it really also then solving the problem of growing the business as well, because as you said at the outset, it's it makes great business sense to have a strong DE&I strategy and policy in place. So it's good to think of it as a tool, and as opposed to just a topic, that we need to implement, So some very good points there, Gerry. And I'm conscious that we're probably coming towards the end of our chat, or fireside chat. But one final question. What should we expect from the IAIS and the industry in the future on this very important issue?
Yeah, so well, I think what I'm really looking forward to right now is the next consultation paper, as I say, which will be on that, which will be coming at diversity, equity, and inclusion through the market conduct lens. And look, this is really interesting, because in this paper, we will see this discussion between, on the one hand, okay, insurance is based on good risk pricing, and of course, it's based on commercial decision making and working out what's your target audience, working out what your products are, what your scope of distribution are, all of that. And then there's this insurance core principle 19, which talks about the fair treatment of customers. Now, what this paper is looking at, okay, in that space, or that space that sort of straddles commercial decision making and fair treatment of customers, what's the role of a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens in driving better outcomes? And it's going to be a really, really interesting paper in looking at kind of how you can approach your sort of the establishment of your target market, the development of your products, the distribution of your products in a way that enhances all of that, because you're applying this diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's going to be it's a really interesting paper. So that's coming, as I say, in the second part of the year. Beyond that, then, I mean, maybe it's a good point to finish on. So as I said, the last 2-3 years has been a period of really strong focused product-based activity by the IAIS in developing its thinking, its own internal approach to DE&I and that of its membership, or with its membership, and now these products. I think now, as we move to the next stage and we move into the next strategy, because we're just at moving into a new strategic phase for the IAIS generally, I think there'll be a real focus now of building on that. Right, and I think that's a great place to be, that you lay these really strong foundations, these conceptual foundations, these product foundations, and these practice foundations, and then you say, okay, we need to embed and deepen and make sure that we are really living this, and we are really helping our members to live it and to profit from it. So that I think will be the next phase. So it's a discussion that will only deepen, and that I think we will see a lot. Sorry, that's my phone just going off. Sorry about my.
Oh yeah, no problem, Gerry.
I interrupted the stream, so I should just make sure that's properly off. Okay, that should be off now. So yes, so I think that we're at that really good point where now we're moving from kind of one phase into the next, and that's the phase of deepening the discussion even further.
Great. No, I must say thanks again, Gerry, for being so open and forthcoming with your insights and the perspective of the IAIS on the very important topic. And I'm delighted we could cover so much off today. Really looking forward to pursuing this topic and driving it forward in our own organisation and on our DE&I platform that we have launched in Insurance Europe for members. We decided it would be a great idea to have a platform where we could share these insights, and we had our first meeting there earlier this year. So this is a really great time to have the DEI conversation with yourself, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with all our members and talking to you again soon. So thank you again.
Thank you, Moyagh. And look, it's great that we're having this conversation. Thank you to Insurance Europe and to your own role in Insurance Ireland for making this such a real engagement and sense of progress. So thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Not at all. And thanks to the Insurance Europe team for putting on such a smooth production too. Thank you.